If I can't communicate properly with the other person, I know this is not going to be something I'm going to enjoy. Therefore, it's not going to be something I can do my best.
That you need to be very flexible and have a new perspective.
Diverse communication or collaboration is very much important, maybe for the innovation.皆さんこんにちは。リンク&イノベーションの山本です。で、代々木にですね、今年オープンしましたイノベーションカフェ DICT キューブ東京の、創設者代表もさせてもらってます。で、今日はですね、なんと代々木の DICT キューブ東京からですね、一歩踏み出しまして、広尾、南青山ですかね、広尾にありますコートヤード広尾さんでいいんですよね。というこれめちゃくちゃ面白いんですけど、ギャラリーを備えたアーティストとかクリエイターのためのインキュベーションみたいな古いアパートメントコートヤード広尾から、撮影させてもらってます。今日はですね、ちょっと前回、田口さん、あとは船越さんというですね、ゲストをお招きしてちょっとプログレのですね、音楽の制作過程みたいなところとビジネススクールの視点でのディスカッションをこちらにいらっしゃいます一ノ瀬さんとですね、企画させていただいて撮影したんですけども、今日はちょっと3人目の最後のゲストということで、田口さん、ゆかさん、船越さんとですね、関係性のあるこちらにいらっしゃいますフレイヤさんを今日はゲストにお招きして、また3人で対談を取らせていただこうかなと思ってやってまいりました。ここはフレイヤさんのアトリエになります。後で多分ね、いろんな作品インサートで入ると思うんですけど、よろしくお願いします。じゃあまた一ノ瀬さん、今日ちょっと軽くこの動画から見る方もいると思うんで、一ノ瀬さんのちょっとご紹介と、なんでこのちょっとプロジェクトというかコラボレーションに至ったのかあたりも含めてちょっとお話しいただいて、ちょっと進めていただけるとありがたいんですけど、お願いします。
皆さんこんにちは。一ノ瀬弘樹と申します。東京外国語大学でマネジメントと文化について教えたりとか、あとはグロービスっていう経営大学院でビジネス人材マネジメントについて教えたりしております。なんでこんな広尾のこのアーティスティックな空間にいるのかって言いますと、これからのビジネスとかマネジメントってこれまでとは違って新しい価値を作んないといけないよとか、いつも勝手したる仲間じゃなくて新しい人たちとフレキシブルにチームを組んで新たな価値を生み出していくという時に、そのアーティスティックな発想であったり、あるいはプロジェクトをファシリテートする力みたいなものが必要になってくるよって言われてるわけですけど、実際にどうやるんだって話になるとなんか曖昧なんですよね。でこれを実際にやっていく上でのヒントを探そうとした場合に、すでにやってる人がいるじゃないということだと思います。でアートの世界、音楽制作の中でプロデューサーがアーティストをプロデュースする。でその時にどういうものが出来上がるのかがわからないけど働きかけながら途中段階でいろんな形でフレキシブルに方向性を変えながら最終的なプロダクトを作り出していくっていうプロセスを見ていくと、そこら辺のヒントがいっぱいあるんじゃないかなということで、以前田口俊さん、それから船越ゆかさん、ユカ&クロノシップっていうバンドのお二人にインタビューしたんですけど、今日はですね、フレイヤ・ディーンさんという方にお話を伺おうと思います。でフレイヤ・ディーンさんはユカ&クロノシップの最新アルバムのストーリーにイラストをつけていただいているイラストレーターの方なんですけど、お父さんはロジャー・ディーンさんという方でございまして、でロジャー・ディーンさんはプログレッシブロック界では非常に有名でございまして、イエスのアルバムのジャケットだったり、それからエイジアっていうアルバムのジャケットなんかを作られて、最初の頃のバージンレコードのロゴも作られてたと。でこのロジャー・ディーンさんにユカ&クロノシップがロゴの制作を頼んだわけですよね。でこれですそれをきっかけに娘さんもイラストレーターとして活動されていて、日本にいるよっていうことを聞いて知り合われた。ですからぜひ最新アルバムのイラストレーション、ストーリーにつけるイラストレーションをお願いしますということで、フレイヤ・ディーンさんに今回加わってもらうことになったんですけど、田口さん プロデューサーとしての立場、プロデュースされるアーティストとしての船越さんの立場があって、関係性がどうかっていう話を前回聞いたんですけど、でもプロジェクトを進めていくにあたっては途中からプロジェクトに入ってくる人っているわけですよね。なので、そういう人にとって何が一番大事なのか、そのビジョンなり方向性っていうのをしっかり把握する上で何が必要で、その中で自分の役割っていうのをどういう形で見極めていくのかっていうことに関してお話を伺えたらなというのが今日の趣旨でございます。So we are hoping to hear a lot from you about the mission and goals and the mindset of a collaborator coming into the project as a newcomer, a new kid, new girl in town.
I'm glad you explained that to me. Thank you. So you want to know?
So just
Yes, maybe brief self-introduction would be
advertise
fine.
about
Okay.
yourself.
So I'm an artist and mostly I paint. I don't know if the cameras are picking up, but there's a few in
We
here.
do.
And I make three-dimensional pieces as well. I'm from England. As Ichinose-san said, my dad is an artist, my mum is an artist, my grandma is an artist. It's become a bit of a tradition in our family. My particular interest is basing my artwork on scientific themes, but also stories. I'm really interested in the kind of psychoanalysis of very old, particularly European fairy tales, and comparing those with Eastern stories as well. And so when Yuka Chronoship approached me with the project of creating this sort of contemporary fairy tale out of themes I was very familiar with from Europe, but also they're coming from a Japanese angle, I thought that would be a very exciting project to have a go at describing with my pictures.
Thank you very much.
So how many years have you been in Tokyo or Japan?
I've been in Japan for 7 years now, but my Japanese is about 2.5-year level still.
No, you do speak actually, but we can maybe mix the language as well today. But
great.
why did you move to Japan or select Tokyo to live your place for your arts?
There were a lot of reasons. I mean, I first came here originally because I'd been given air miles for a birthday present. And so I thought I'd really use them and go, incredibly far. And it had to be somewhere safe because I was going by myself. And I'd grown up with a lot of Japanese culture.
I see.
My parents both loved the food, and when I was little, I've said this a lot, but my parents had kind of issues with a lot of children's television programs and films that they felt didn't really have a particularly ethical core. So they gave me Ghibli films to watch as a child.
Yeah.
A lot of them, it was too early to have subtitles, so
I
I
see.
just watched them in Japanese.
I see.
Unfortunately, it didn't improve my Japanese. But I've, from childhood loved Japanese culture, so I came here and then I completely fell in love with it. And this world of extraordinary artwork that was incredibly skillfully made and interesting just blew my mind, and I thought I have to be somewhere where that's my competition.
That's nice. So if you are not here in Tokyo or Hiro, maybe the Yuka and Chronoship Taguchi-san or Yuka-san, of course even Ichinose-san as well, was not able to reach out to you, then was not able to produce this fifth album from this progress band, right? So this is like a fate, maybe miracle, or maybe I do research about the network science. This is a chaos, kind of like a science. So very much inspired today from your art atelier and yourself. And then I was really excited to, how to say, be connected with you and Taguchi-san, Yuka-san throughout Ichinose-san. You know our first story? We just connected in a LinkedIn social network 2 months ago or something, right?
Got connected
3 or 4 months ago.
In March.
In March or
February,
something.
But it was just a connection. And then later on, I sent him a direct message in
May or maybe this spring, so just a couple of months ago. Then we had only one online call.
Just one Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
And you just knew.
But
You could work together.
the meeting was so excited
Yeah.
because our perspective or philosophy, mindset was totally like on the same page. Then okay, Ichinose-san, let's make something great.
And we had a meeting in his place in Yoyogi.
Yes.
And the next time is with Shun-san and Yuka-san, and we are interviewing. So it's so fast, incredibly fast.
That's incredibly rare that things happen that quickly when you're working in a team.
Yes.
And then you come around here.
Yes. Then I'm now here, right? I've never been, of course, here. Then I was not expected to be such like great place as you are today. So everything is like an evolution process. Importance of art or creation for the business school, maybe not only for the theory, right? So this is very much I'm excited to discuss today.
Alchemy.
Alchemy, yes, yes.
And it's amazing
Exactly.
this encounter all started out from the mileage.
Yeah.
I mean, so many things in my life, I just think, if it weren't for that
A tiny
decision.
ripple would be made into the huge tsunami like this one.
Yeah, and like you were saying with fate,
Yeah.
one of the things I think about constantly is the more you make the most of every single opportunity, the more it looks like fate when you look back on it. You think, God, that was supposed to happen, but really you were just taking that moment and making something new out of it. I don't know, maybe both.
Unbelievable point between Ichinose-san and myself. Maybe today, this is, I think, a third time
Third time.
to have a face-to-face meeting. Not old friend, not colleague. Just a feeling was, of course, 100% matched.
Wow.
And very much quickly, we have been like working to, discussing and working together.
It's quite un-Japanese.
I see.
That's why he's not wearing
I'm
a
going to
mask.
have to come and see your place and see the product of this fast-moving alchemy.
But from our maybe business school perspective, this is like a agile approach or agile development from IT industry. Things to be learned from artists or creators for our maybe business industry is very much important.
I think what you said as well about you both being sort of slightly unusual in that way of kind of, having these things in common and moving based on it. Like, as an artist and certainly moving to a new country, you have to be very, very open to people or you won't survive. You have to make friends and make connections. And that can sometimes cause problems. But you have to sort of, I had to kind of explain to myself why I needed to keep that frame of reference and that mindset is because if you don't allow that flexibility of the molecules to move around, you don't have that new experience happening. So it's something that, for me personally, coming to Japan has had these wave effects of I had to be very, very open to meeting new people and having these collaborative experiences. But then you have to very quickly learn to trust your intuition in terms of when it works and when it doesn't work. And I think intuition and feeling is something that's really unfortunately neglected from business. Because I can have a fantastic job in a great company where I'm paid really well, but if I don't get along with my manager, I'm going to leave.
Yeah.
So
I see.
I think these kind of feelings and creating these streams and networks that move, I think it's going to be so important, particularly in the future when I think the whole paradigm changes.
Yeah, I think maybe we are really on the turning point. Maybe from the traditional era to the maybe next decade as a new era with such artistic mindset and also cutting edge technology. Probably DICT stands for the design innovation, co-creation, technology. We will be able to, of course, collaborate each other from any fields, maybe any expertise. I believe.
I think the intuition, believing in your intuition and feeling is just one thing, but it's quite another to create something out of your intuition and feeling, especially when it is a project, that you join in later on. You said that you got interested in the story, full of familiar themes, framework, but at the same time coming from a very different culture. How did you get started with, having kind of the feel of the project, or direction of the project, or vision of the project?
Well, initially, I mean, what was most obvious about it for me was it was a story about the environment and how you protect the environment. And I thought it was really interesting that the protagonist was a young girl, because, I don't know, I was thinking about it today, there is something about young girls where we do, and I remember this when I was a child, we get very militant about the environment at certain stages, and there's that connection with nature. Like, I teach children sometimes, and they're so fascinated by just the absolute tiniest things, and as they grow up, that extrapolates to everything. And I thought, yeah, I mean, when I was a child, I boycotted Nestle, and I had so many sort of agendas and wars to be won, and it just made me think, yeah, there's something in little girls where they do want to save the world, but they're also incredibly fragile. I mean, when you look at Greta Thunberg, you just sort of think, how is so much power coming from such a tiny person? And so I thought that rang really true to me, that this story was being led by a little girl. And so much of it was so delicate. All of the imagery was very beautiful, and just reading it immediately made me want to make real those places that were described.
これご覧になってる、方に簡単に補足をしますと、
お願いします。
最新アルバムのストーリーっていうのはちっちゃい女の子の話なんですね、小さい女の子がひょんなことから何者かに連れ去られて、なんで連れ去られていくのかというと、彼女には非常に大きな力があって、地球を救うこともできるし、そうはさせまいとする力もあるっていう話なんですけど、フレイヤさんはやっぱり自分に重ね合わせて考えて、自分で「We're so militant."
I was terrible. I remember there was a girl in my class who had a Kit Kat bar, which is Nestle, and I took it off her and I threw it in the bin. It was terrible, and yeah, I would tell everyone who would listen about how terrible Nestle were.
海外だと皆さん若い頃はそういう時期がある。環境問題についてはやっぱり小さい頃に自分もそうだったみたいなところでもってストーリーを読んで、でもストーリーの中にはすごく美しいbeautiful sceneries and metaphors and いろんなその不思議な動物たちとかが出てきたりするので、そこは非常にファンタスティックなところで、そこがすごく魅力だったっていうことですよね。So that's how you get started. And I know that you develop your idea by collecting the reference image on the internet and put it into Pinterest and
A lot of it was, for this one, luckily, because it was based on a European family, I could use a lot of my own photographs from my home town and
your hometown.
my hometown.
これ僕もちょっと皆さんに日本語で補足するとですね、今一ノ瀬さんがお話しいただいてたお話は、要はこの間田口さんと船越さんっていうお二人との対談をしたビデオがあるんで、見てない方は見ていただければと思うんですけど、概要欄に貼っておくので、田口さんっていうプロデューサーがいらっしゃって、でそのプログレバンド、このユカ&クロノシップっていうバンドの5枚目のアルバムを制作されるっていうお話の中で、当然アーティストのその船越ゆかさんとねお話されて、こういう音楽作っていくよとか、やるのは当然じゃないですか、プロデューサーとミュージシャンということで。ただ今回のアルバムの面白いのは、田口さんがちょっと物語みたいなものをね、日本語で 執筆されて、これがまあ今回のアルバムのコンセプトだみたいな。でその日本語で書いた文章を実はこの東京外語大で教えていらっしゃるその一ノ瀬さんとなんか学生さん通じて出会ったんですよね、確かね。
そうです
ね。だからそれもこんな感じで偶然の出会いで紹介されて、で音楽好きでしかもロンドンにいらっしゃった一ノ瀬さんがこの日本語を翻訳して英語の物語、絵本みたいなもんですけどして、でその英語と音楽を聞いてフレイヤさんがそのご自身のインスピレーションの中で過去のさっきお話しいただいた体験とかも。
その時は音楽できてない。
できてないんですかまだ。じゃあ文章だけ？文章だけで音楽来ることを前提に、要はここにあるアテリエのような絵本にこう挿絵みたいな感じですよね。それを書かれたっていうこういうコラボレーションなんですよ。なのでミュージシャンじゃないんですけど、プロデューサーとかそのミュージシャンのこの間の田口さん、船越さんと別に翻訳家じゃないですけど、要は翻訳っていう立場で関わられて、それで今回イラストレーターのフレイさんが関わって、アルバムはもちろんできるんでしょうけど、そこに絵本ができてると。これは最終版はあれなんですかね、イラストと英語になってるんですかね。日本語もあるんですかね。
最終話の英語
版なんですね。だから英語の絵本とこの音楽のアルバムがワンセットで最終的なアウトプットということなので、それで今ちょっと一ノ瀬さんがね今いろいろ聞いていただいてたっていうで、過去の体験とかもね実際そこにインスピレーションの中にあったっていうことなんですけど、なかなかこういう異業種のコラボレーションって僕らの産業、ビジネスの産業とかでなかなかできないじゃないですか。オープンイノベーションとかとは言いながらもですね。でしかも大学の専門家もなかなか外部の専門家とはここまでオープンにつながり合えないんで、僕らはちょっと特別かもしれないですけどあとは政府とか政治家もさすがにここまではできないっていうのが僕らのある種の共通の問題意識だったんですけど、アーティストの方々ってもうコロナだなんだいうもっともっと前から、この間も田口さんのシステムのお話聞いたけどもう20年ぐらい前でしたもんね。30年ぐらい前か。こんな感じで知り合いだなんだってさっき運命っていう言葉使いましたけど、こうやって出会っていく中でフィーリングが合うとアジャイルにポンポンポンポンと作っていくというか、じゃあやりましょうとか、フレイヤさんじゃあイラスト描いてもらいましょうみたいな感じで動いていってるっていうのが私もそうでしたし、一ノ瀬さんから伺って一ノ瀬さん自身もビジネススクールの観点からこういう部分をね一般の例えばビジネスの方々、世界の方々に伝えたりとか、政治とかアカデミアでもいいんでしょうけどね、あるんですよっていうのが実は今日の動画のね、テーマになってますので、ぜひちょっとここね3本通して見ていただきたいですよね。ぜひね。
What interests me is that when you try to believe in your intuition and feeling, how do you get the kind of feeling that this is not the project for me, this is not the guy?
90% it's whether or not I have like that feeling that you were describing when you guys met. I think I've worked with lots of different people in different fields, like in medical museums or in Italian opera or video games, lots of different fields. And I kind of don't mind whatever the project is, as long as I can have discussions about ideas with the people that I'm working with. I'm happy to work with anyone. And however exciting and exactly what I want to do the project is, if I can't communicate properly with the other person, I know this is not going to be something I'm going to enjoy, therefore it's not going to be something I can do my best.
Well, do you get this frustration when you're communicating, when you don't want to have an overview of the project?
I have to say it's been a really long time since I've had that experience, because I think it's sort of that magic that happens when you decide who you are and what you want to do. The people that don't fit you stop asking. But when I was much younger, I would get a lot of people asking me to do work and also saying, we can't pay you, but it will be really good for your exposure. And that was never true. So, but you know, those things come up a lot. This will be an exciting experience, it'll be really good for you. I'm sorry we don't have any money. So those projects luckily don't seem to come up very often anymore. But it would often as well be like, I don't know, someone might come to me with a particular project and we don't discuss it at all because we've just been having a chat about ideas and other things, and then I'll know, okay, I want to do this, I don't care what it is.
フィーリングが合うとかよく言うじゃないですか、ね、もちろんフィーリングが合うっていうのは、まあ、当然大事で、でフレイヤさんもそこが非常に重要っておっしゃってるんですけど、まあ、もちろんペイも大事だし、っていうところもあるんですけどで一番最初にあるのはだからそのどういう人であれ、そのプロフェッショナルにこれができるっていうのがあって、でその上で話をした時になんかピタッとはまる感じがすると、だからこうスキルとか経験とかっていうのがなんかこう資格があってとか、過去のプロジェクトに関わってて、客観的なものだけじゃなくて、kind of the feeling of the jive of the conversation and all this, you know, pulse of the feeling matters.
I think it's the most important thing to me. And if I'm talking to someone and I feel like, you know, we both want to create something with the same end result, for me, it can be as vague as just making something better than what didn't exist before. It can be very vague, but as long as I can sense, okay, this person's coming from a direction of wanting to do something positive, you know.
There's one very impressive moment that I had at the first meeting with you and Taguchi-san and Yuka-san. They were talking about the basic concept of this project, about the album, about the story, but the conversation had shifted into a story of Hoshi Shinichi, short story. 大きな穴が開いて、ものすごく深くて、そこが見えなくて石投げても音がしないみたいな。なんだこれはっていろんな人がいろんなものを投げ込む、ある日空を見上げたら石が1個落ちてきて、おい誰かいるかっていう声が聞こえたっていう話なんですけど、田口さんendlessly talking about the whole story of Hoshi Shinichi, and I was translating him, thinking that what is he doing? We're supposed to talk about the concept of this album and the songs, but he, you know, talked the whole story to you, and then later on I realized that, you know, the story is about an endless loop of the chain of the people, environment, and so on. So that, you know, somehow tells a very important concept of this project and CD and story. So I was quite surprised that you know, came up with the illustration with the bits and pieces of the places all linked into the circle. そこに出てきたいろんな場面が輪っかになってつながってる絵っていうのはストーリーには出てこないんですよ。でフレイヤさんがそれを作ってくれた時に、Yes, please. So it's very important to talk a lot about this project. Sometimes, you know, the conversation may be shifted into what seems to be totally unrelated stories, but it will tell a lot about the attitudes and values and directions and visions of the project. So that really counts when you are trying to get the feel.
Yeah, I think it can be much more powerful than explaining it directly. This is why I'm so fascinated by fairy tales, is the thing that's trying to be communicated. I mean, as someone said recently to me, a story is a lesson told in an entertaining way, and that's all that it is. And telling stories to each other like metaphors, I think it's a much more compelling way of helping someone understand what you're saying and remember it as well. Yeah, and that's why I want to paint them, really. Just add that extra emphasis on the meaning.
So that during such like diverse project, you were like influenced like from each other. For example, from illustration to like producer, maybe illustration to translator, and then maybe you like change during the project from like feedback from like each other, right? So this is like much more like agile development process. Then maybe originally this concept created from Taguchi-san as a producer, but maybe output as a product maybe has been changed from his perspective as well, right? Maybe add on your inspiration or maybe passion or maybe experience or knowledge. So this is actually co-creation, right? I have got a quick question, but what was the impression from his translation from Taguchi-san's story? Because I heard from him now, I didn't know that, but no music, right, at that point. So you don't know their music, but only the story. So how was that? And also after you received the music itself, how was the like matching or like your feeling between music and maybe the story?
So when we were having those first discussions, my impression was I think if you have similar interests to someone, it will coincidentally come out that you look at similar things, have similar interests. And obviously both of us like stories and fantastical stories, and so even if we weren't talking directly about the music, I could see, okay, we're coming from a similar direction in terms of our interests and things that we've read. So that was helpful to me. The aspect of not having the music until later on, it didn't really affect me too much because of that same reason. If you know you're coming from a similar direction to someone, I think you can just feel it out from these conversations. I'd heard some of their music previously, so I knew somewhat about the kind of soundscapes of it. And I think what was also really interesting to me was what we both had was the text. That story, I mean, the imagery is really, really powerful in that I don't think you could do much different than what they did with it in terms of the sounds. I'm not a musician, but if you're talking about sort of glass bubbles and you're talking about iridescent water and exploding stars, you can't go in with a bassoon. It's going to be delicate and it's going to be beautiful. And so if I'd made the image or the sketch before I got the music, it would often happen where I'd be like, okay, this is exactly what I was thinking. Sometimes what would be even better is if I'd done the sketch and then I got the music and then I thought, okay, this helps me get the feeling of the mood of the time of day maybe. But I think it's not a matter of getting it right or wrong, but because we both had that pinpoint of the text to pivot from, it came together.
もう一つ私がすごい印象に残ってることがあって、で以前の田口さんへのインタビューの時に音楽ソフトを使ってて、でコピーする時にテンポ設定間違ったらそっちの方が良かったみたいなことも、怪我の巧妙みたいなこともあるよって話をされてたんですけど、実はフレイヤさんとのイラストレーションでもそういうことがありまして、
ああそうですか。
女の子の話だっていうことでしたけど、女の子は何者かに異なる違う時空に連れ去られてしまうんですよね。それをこう探している豚のキャラクターがいて、魚のクロノフィッシュっていうのがいてって話をしてるって時に、真ん中にその連れ去られたはずの女の子がいるっていうイラストになったんです。
はいはいはい。
So when you are making this illustration, you subconsciously put this in the middle?
Or maybe I subconsciously added a part of the story that didn't exist. I have no idea what happened there.
I have no idea. No. So, すごい面白かったのが、田口さんから連絡が来て、 ちょっとこれ間違ってると、
はいはい、
この女の子はこの場面で存在しないから、こう変えなきゃっていう話になったんですよ。でその俺を聞いた私は、これ変更するにはどう変更したらいいのかとか、それはフレイヤさんちょっと大変だぞとか、って言うかなとかいろいろ考えてたんですけど、しばらくして田口さんから「いやこれこのままでいいかも」っていう連絡が来たんですね。なぜかっていうと、こっちにいるクロノシップっていうのは連れ去られた女の子が違う時空の彼方に連れ去られてるってことを知ってると、こっちにいる豚のキャラクターはそれを知らないと、で女の子はこっちを見てるんですよ、豚の方を見てない、だから豚の方は魚を見てるんだけど、女の子は見えてない、で魚の方は自分が時空の彼方にいる女の子が見えているっていう絵だというふうに解釈すれば、
そうか、
これはこれで OK だって思ったんですよね。So it turned out to be an unexpected form of expression of the story, and this kind of what started out as a mistake turned out to be the OK description is an important part of the project when you're going along. So I was quite impressed that you need to be very flexible and have a new perspective.
Well, Taniguchi-san needed to be very I would have redone it or figured that out, but yeah.
Nobody realized that she shouldn't be here.
Finally, this result would be like better than his original idea, right?
Yeah.
So
it was better because they had this in mind when they were talking. It does not exist physically, but in their mind, they had the girl in the mind. So this illustration shows psychoanalytic reality.
Almost like it was intentional. Yeah.
So that such discussion is really interested for me from my background, molecular biology. Maybe you know about such field in your master degree, but in our cell, we have a genome for gene expression, right? So always mistake or errors happen. But such errors or happened is really important for our, sustainable evolution, because sometimes very good protein will be created. But maybe such he mentioned the flexibility, maybe like tolerance or maybe acceptance would be very much important. We say asobi in Japanese. Asobi means kind of like a buffer. Such buffer can maybe create such unexpected innovation sometime. So such diverse communication or collaboration is very much important maybe for the innovation. Then if the environment is very much stable and fixed like in 20th century, we don't need such maybe collaboration for the additional innovation. But now we are very much unstable environment in the world, right? From all of the maybe perspective. So we need to such collaboration as much as possible. Google from San Francisco, they have of course much data from real world. They always calculate such percentage of probability. So they do invest kind of like a mistake or error project. You can do anything you want with this budget like this. Then you can just report to us. They are seeing the autonomous evolution like this. But 100% of their activity, if this such like innovation activity, of course the company will be bankrupt. They calculate 10%, 50%. How about the next year? Like this. So optimization of maybe their business model and then maybe environment or market
That's really interesting.
If no buffer in the company, this company will be gone because no innovation or no change management.
Yeah.
Maybe very fixed or stable century like 20s, we can just work as a like robot. This will be more important for the higher quality. So maybe we are now on the maybe turning point between traditional approach to the such maybe agile approach.
I think as an artist, actually it's something that you have to do in terms of creativity as well, is you have to force yourself to not do the things you normally do. And one of the ways of doing that is, lots of people describe it in terms of lots of different industries, but being very tired or making a mistake with something. Or what I've often done is have two books and go between and let my eyes half close and allow images to create themselves in my tired mind. And it's so you're forcing yourself to let go of control. And I think making something new is partly creation, but I think a big part of it is just recognizing something that works, that you had no control over. It's the same reason people do exercises where they draw with their left hand or upside down. It's trying to force you to create new patterns of working. Because if you do everything the same every time, you make the same thing every time. So yeah, that's really interesting that they do that, and what happened with us in this collaboration is a sort of collaborative version of that same forcing yourself to recognize something that isn't how you would normally do it. One of the ways that I do it often actually is with collage. So rather than doing a sketch, I'll cut out loads of other images and mix them together and then notice something that works rather than trying to create it.
I see.
Because if we're just bringing something out of ourselves, that's always, it's just going to repeat itself, I think. You have to have that, forced break in the circuitry, I think, somehow.
Taguchi-san said that there are basically two kinds of producers. One type of producer is trying to produce, manufacture, the music according to the prescribed specification. And the other type of the producer is let it go. Go and see what would be created out of this process. So you said that if you really try to make something all out of what you have, then it's repetition and it's coming out the same thing. So you try intentionally shuffle things out and see how it will come out. So that will give you a new ideas and perspectives and create something that was not before.
Yeah, and that's really interesting what he said about producers, because I think with the first type, the type that knows what they're doing and can create an atmosphere where that really works, that's how you get excellence in a system that already functions well. But if the system is changing, you need the second type of producer to let the autonomous parts reform in some new way. That's really interesting. That's much how I prefer to do it.
Pressure. But that's totally agree with this approach as the second approach way of Taguchi-san, because my incubation in Yoyogi, DICT Cube Tokyo, is just a platform for innovators, because I believe we cannot control such innovation, even government. So we can do is provide or create such platform with the flexibility or tolerance or maybe acceptance, as we discussed, then to maximize probability of innovation or evolution. That's all. Nothing for maybe others, because we are not God or goddess, right? So I think Taguchi-san's way is a better approach than first producer, as I spoke to him last time. And then maybe my incubation will be able to create startup company, maybe new NPO, maybe new government policy, maybe new art or creators or scientists or engineers. So such space, I believe, to collaborate with a diverse team as maybe we call the DAO, the decentralized autonomous organization. We can collaborate from any place, maybe any fields or any expertise. So I really would like to collaborate with Ichinose-san and Freyja-san. Maybe next time at the DICT Cube Tokyo, we can definitely maybe plan your gallery.
Love to do.
Then Ichinose-san can be a producer or director.
Yes, but the second kind.
Yes. Then this is that I think the importance of this discussion is not joking from my side, because this is atelier, your atelier. Then you have a gallery next side, but this apartment and the building itself is probably focusing on the artists or creators. So no scientists or engineers or politician or maybe business person here, right? Basically. But my place at the Yoyogi DICT Cube Tokyo accepts everyone. So maybe you will be able to get a new fan of your art from outside of your field. I believe.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Then we will definitely, produce such maybe opportunity next time. I really inspired from your conversation, and thank you so much for your opportunity, Ichinose-san, to connect with Freyja-san and Takuchi-san and Yuka-san last time. For me, very much excited to connect with such talented people from outside of my field.
Well, it's very exciting for me too. It's always been my interest with the sciences. I wish I'd been able to follow both simultaneously.
Yeah.
There's one question I want to ask you, is that you mentioned that it's very important to be open and flexible and accept all these different people. But how can you be that open and flexible? And is there any trick and tips and a list of things to do?
It's something I've tried to, in some ways, dampen down a little bit. So I have to say I was always like that. But I think, obviously, moving to a different country exacerbates it. Lots of my friends I talked to, particularly recently, that feeling of being in a new country, I just think it happens naturally. If you don't open yourself up, you don't make connections, and then it just doesn't work out. And so it can cause problems. And the way that I've decided to approach it is I want to maintain that openness. I want to be able to make those connections with anyone I meet if there's that opportunity there. I think there are some people who I love very much in this country who it's taken me 7 years to get to know properly. And I think those kind of relationships are incredibly important. But for me, with what I do, I also have to very quickly know and learn, is this someone I can work with? Is this someone I can do something with? And if I'm not open, that we brush off each other and it doesn't work out. So for me personally, the way I've worked out best to kind of continue with that attitude is I have my studio, which is in a bigger setting, which is staffed by other people. There's sort of layers and layers of kind of ways that I can sort of manufacture and manipulate these relationships so that if something doesn't work out, it doesn't kind of destabilize everything. So there are ways of managing it, but on a personal level, that's how I've managed being able to maintain that openness. maybe like a cell, you have the osmosis, but you have that boundary on the outside, so things can permeate, but you're protected. That's kind of how it was something that was, mentioned lots, that perhaps Freyja, you need to be a little bit more discerning and picky about these things, but I don't want to be. I want to be able to meet everyone on the same level at the first place, and allow things to grow if they do, and allow them to die off if they have to.
So, in a sense, you're trying to control the level of, you're trying to achieve the uncontrollable level of instability.
Yes.
So things are changing and shaking all the time, but you're managing. It does not go beyond this point. So layers and layers of controlling mechanism is there. So you get used to be changing a little all the time, but not completely torn into pieces.
Exactly. I think if it was just me, if I was alone here and I had to rely on only myself, you have to develop that personal sort of thick skin, and I never wanted to do that. So I let other people do it for me, my manager and the courtyard's manager. They're my thicker skin, so I don't have to grow one. And there are risks with that, but that's how I prefer to have it, because then you have these very happy accidents. I think will happen more often.
すごい今の重要だったので、日本語でちょっと説明しますと、環境変化が激しいからいろんなことやらないといけないぞって言われすぎてますけど、急に変われるもんじゃない、大事なのは変わろうとするっていう意識的な努力はする、でもめちゃくちゃ変わって疲れ果てないようにそこをしっかりコントロールしていくっていうところがオープンな形でいろんな人と接していくっていうのはコントロールしながらしすぎないみたいな、
人によりますしね。
So you're keeping exactly the opposite things all at once, like controlling the instability, keeping the disorder.
Or I'm delegating the control to other people and allowing myself to remain unstable.
Striking a fine balance would be the key to.
Yeah.
人それぞれ多分そういうマネージがね必要なんでしょうけど、本当にこれからの時代多分どこのフィールドの方もね、そういう自分の多分パーソナリティとか経験とか知識とか考えとかに応じてコントロールしながら、でもとはいえやっぱ変わっていかなきゃいけないっていう時代ではさっきの議論も含めてあると思うんで、
一つのことだけにこだわりすぎない、
そうですね、
そのフラットな見方、新しい見方っていうのを、だから間違いって言っても、間違ったからこれ正さなきゃだけではなくて、いやこれはこれでいいんじゃないみたいな、
さっきの事例みたいにね、
ような心持ちでもって関わり合っていく。で、新しく来る人についてもそうした考え方で参加してもらえるような場作りをしながらっていうのが求められるファシリテーション力ですよね。
そうでしょうね。
打ち合わせの場だけではなくて、物事を進めていく時でも同じ態度でもって接していく。
そうですね。
Facilitation is very important.
So, like this discussion, but maybe producer means good facilitator for the business or project, right? So not only Taguchi-san, but maybe our industry really requires such professional producer. How to create a new business, how to create a new process, or how to realize like digital transformation like this. Because film producer does work everything, right? For example, maybe monetization, discussing with the artist or maybe music director or something like that. So we really respect to, and also we really learn from like creator or artist like your field. We do really believe so.
I mean, in art as well, the producer is sort of crucial. I don't know how many artists you've met, but we're not famously brilliant at producing ourselves. And it's sort of not really our job either, like to have that kind of softness and openness. There's a totally different frame of mind and profession to creating a project and making it work. So it's absolutely crucial. I've worked on lots of projects where the producer, I mean, all of them absolutely directly affects everything that happens. Whether it works or it doesn't work, it's just the producer. Doesn't matter how good the artists are if the product can't actualize.
いいディスカッションをね今日もさせていただいたんで本当にフレイヤさんありがとうございました。ちょっと最後にでもこのね、3つの動画のこの本当企画そのものをね、このユカ&クロノシップさんっていう僕もちょっと存じ上げてなかったそのプログレっていう音楽の分野がね、まあ1970年代ってこのご説明ありましたけど、このフレイヤさんご出身のねイギリスから生まれて、で日本人の田口さんとかねユカさんとか、あと一ノ瀬さんがこうやってその制作に関わってですよ。で巡り巡って東京にいらっしゃるねそのフレイヤさんにそのお父さんディーンさんがねいらっしゃったとはいえつながってっていうちょっと奇妙なこのねループみたいなもので、実際はやっぱこのフィードバックの中で本人の考えすらもアップデートされていくみたいなお話もあったんですけど、やっぱりこういうことを僕らもねインダストリーというかビジネスの中でも別にこれアカデミアでもそうでしょうし、行政でも政治でもそうだと思うんですけど、学んでいかなきゃいけないかなって本当にね3つの対談を通して思いましたよね。最後にちょっとせっかくこれプロデュースいただいて、ファシリテートもいただいたちょっと一ノ瀬さんに最後ちょっと締めていただいて、終わりにしたいと思うんですけどいかがですかね。
このお話を山本さんの方に持って行った時に頭にあったのが、やっぱりこのお三方からお話を聞いてるようなことっていうのは、実はこれから必要になるぞとか、これできなきゃ大変だぞみたいなことを言われてることを当たり前にやってる人たちがいるよってことなんですよね。アートとか音楽制作とかっていうと全然関係ないことのように思いますけど、でもその話を聞いていくと、これからの時代に必要になること、何を大事にしないといけないのか、でも何にこだわっちゃいけないのかとか、そのままあるっていうところが、そのお話を聞いていくとすごく明らかになってくるだろう。で、最初に言いましたけど、働き方もウーバーイーツ的に集まるみたいな話になる時に、やっぱり一番重要なのは一人一人が自分のやるべきことをちゃんとできるということで、そのオーシャンズイレブンみたいなバシッと組み合わされないといけない。でも、その組み合わせ方っていうのが
揺らぎがあるね。
わけですよね。揺らぎをなんていうんですかね、意識的にコントロールするというのが重要だということだと思います。ライト兄弟が飛行機発明したって言ってるじゃないですか。でもライト兄弟より前に飛行機を考えた人は山ほどいるわけですよね。じゃあそれ以前の考えとライト兄弟は何が違ったかというと、ライト兄弟は飛行機は安定しないっていう前提で考えたと。それ以前は気流が乱れた時にどう安定させるのかを考えてたから墜落したわけです。常にぐらぐら揺れてるけど、落ちないためにはどうしたらいいかっていう視点で、飛行機を考えたってことが発明になってるってことですよね。だから不安定みたいなものっていうのを極力排除するんじゃなくて、許容できるレベルの不安定な状態をいかに安定させるのかみたいな。新しい人が入ってきて、何かと大変なことはあるわけですよ。でもその何かと大変なことっていうのをマネージできるレベルの範囲に収めつつ、新しいことをちゃんとやっていくみたいなところを面倒くさがらず、しっかりとやれるようになっていくっていうのが、お三方からお話を聞いたところにもしっかり共通しているところだなということだと思うので、そうしたことを念頭に置きながら仕事に取り組んでいくと、いろんな新しい可能性が
気づきとかねあるでしょうし、
広がっていくんだろうなと、お話聞いてと思いました。
いや本当ありがとうございます。今のお話もね、一ノ瀬さん言われてたのは、さっきのイノベーションはコントロールできないとかね、バッファーとか遊びの話もあったと思うんですけど、もうまさにライト兄弟の今例え話ぴったりだと思うんですよ。で今回僕も田口さんとかゆかさんとかね、フレイヤさんのお話って僕らにとってはいいケーススタディですよね。 で僕らの産業で今その新しいテクノロジー加えて変わっていく DX みたいな時代の時にケースがないっていうお話したじゃないですか。でお手本がないんでやっぱりなかなかねどうしたらいいんだか分かんないっていう中で、実は自分たちのフィールドから出たら全然違うかもしれないこういうアーティストの人たちの取り組みそのものがもうそれ20年も30年も前からやってるんだから学びましょうよっていうところから、実は一ノ瀬さんとねリンクドイン通じてオンラインでディスカッションしてこれに至っているので、まあちょっとまたぜひなんか次回のね企画もぜひこれフレイヤさん乗ってくれてるんでやりたいですよね。まあ、ぜひちょっと代々木使っていただいて、
ぜひお願いします。
今度一ノ瀬プロデューサーでアーティストフレイヤさんでちょっとぜひやりましょう。これでちょっとまあ3個目のね動画最後になりますけども、ちょっとぜひ概要欄にリンク貼っておきますので123って続けてね見ていただけると、僕らの言わんとしてるところ、まあ、ビジネススクールなんて言ってもねセオリーが多いんでなかなかこういうのに触れ合えませんから、僕らもこういう講義をやっぱしていかなきゃいけないですよねなんて意気投合したんですけど、ぜひご覧いただければと思います。いつもこのDICTのですね YouTube チャンネルご覧いただいてありがとうございます。ご視聴いただきましてまたぜひ、
はい、
井上さん、フレイヤさんよろしくお願いします。今日は本当にありがとうございました。
ありがとうございます。